I started the engine of my taxi and looked at my three beautiful daughters in the back seat. Their sleepy eyes blinked as I smiled at them through the rearview mirror. The city was just waking up, the sun still stretching its golden arms over the horizon. "All right, my little angels," I said softly. "Listen carefully. Today, I want to tell you a story. It's not just any story, it's our story." They sat up a little curious. Lily, the eldest at 10, tilted her head. "Our story, Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said, pulling out of the driveway. "And I want you to listen to the end, okay?" They nodded, and I took a deep breath. "You see, once upon a time, there was a woman named Emily Me," I chuckled. "She was a mother, a hard worker, and most of all, she loved her daughters more than anything in the world. But life wasn't always easy for her." Lena, the middle one, only 8 years old, leaned forward. "Why, Mama?" "Because life sometimes gives us challenges," I said. "But every challenge makes us stronger." I drove through the quiet streets, my daughters listening closely. "Emily was just 33 years old," I continued, "but she had seen many tough days. She worked as a taxi driver, driving all day and sometimes even at night. While most people were asleep in their warm beds, she was on the road, taking strangers to their destinations." Luna, the youngest at 5, gasped, "At night too?" I nodded, my heart aching a little. "Yes, my love, sometimes at night too. Because Emily had to make sure her daughters had food to eat, clothes to wear, and a home to sleep in." "But, Mama," Lily said softly, "weren't you scared?" I smiled at her through the mirror. "Oh, many times, my love. There were nights when Emily felt lonely, when the roads were dark and empty, and she was the only car driving through the city. There were times when she picked up passengers who looked angry, sad, or lost in their own troubles." I remembered those nights too well, the fear of driving through silent streets, the worry about making enough money to pay the bills, the exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. But I pushed through for them. "But, Mama," Lena asked, "why did you choose to be a taxi driver?" I turned the wheel carefully and sighed. "Because, my little angel, sometimes we don't choose life. Life chooses for us." Emily didn't have a big degree or a fancy job. She only had a strong heart, strong hands, and a love so big for her daughters that she was willing to do anything to keep them safe. Luna's tiny hands reached out and touched my shoulder. "You are so strong, Mama." I felt my eyes sting. "Thank you, my love. But you know what kept Emily going?" Lily whispered. "What?" I smiled. "You three?" They all sat up a little taller. Every time Emily felt tired, she remembered her daughter's laughter. Every time she felt scared, she thought about their smiles. Every time she wanted to give up, she reminded herself that she was their hero, and heroes never quit. I glanced at them in the mirror. Their eyes were wide, their expression soft, but life wasn't always kind, I continued. There were days when Emily barely made enough money. There were nights when she came home so tired that she could hardly stand. There were moments when she cried in the car alone, wondering if she was doing enough. Lena's lip trembled. "Mama, You cried. I took a deep breath. Yes, sweetheart. But do you know what I learned? Lily wiped her eyes. What? That. The strongest people are the ones who cry but still keep going, I said. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel tired. But it's not okay to stop. The car was silent for a moment. Then Luna whispered, Mama, you are a real hero. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Not just me, my loves. We're heroes. Every single person who wakes up every day, fights their battles, and still loves with all their heart, that person is a hero. Lena sniffled. I want to be strong like you when I grow up. I smiled. You already are, my love. The sun was higher now, casting golden light over the city. I drove past the bakery where the smell of fresh bread filled the air. I drove past the school where children laughed in the playground. And do you know what Emily learned the most? I asked. What? They all asked together. That happiness is not about money or big houses or fancy things, I said softly. Happiness is about love. It's about coming home after a long, hard day and seeing the faces of the people you love. It's about knowing that no matter how hard life gets, we have each other. Lily smiled through her tears. I love you, Mama. Lena and Luna said it too, their little voices full of warmth. I felt my heart swell, and I love you. More than anything in this world. We reached home, and I parked the taxi. I turned to look at them properly. So remember this, my angels. Life will be hard sometimes, but never stop fighting. Never stop loving, and never, ever forget that you are stronger than you think. They nodded, their eyes full of understanding. Luna reached over and hugged me. Then Lily and Lena joined. We sat there in the car, wrapped in each other's arms, the world outside quiet for a moment, and in that moment, I knew I had already won the greatest victory of all. I held my daughters close, feeling their tiny arms wrapped around me. Their warmth, their love, it was everything. The streets outside were busy now, the city fully awake, but in that moment inside our little car, time stood still. Lily pulled back first, wiping her eyes. Mama, I never knew how hard you worked. I cupped her cheek gently. That's because I never wanted you to worry, my love. A mother's job is to make sure her children feel safe and happy no matter what. Lena sniffled. But, Mama, who takes care of you? That question made my heart ache in a way I couldn't explain. I smiled, though, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You three do. Every smile, every hug, every I love you, that's what keeps me going. Luna, with her tiny hands, held my face. Then we will always love you extra, extra, extra much. I laughed softly, squeezing her close. That's all I could ever ask for. We finally stepped out of the car, and I unlocked the door to our small but cozy home. The moment we walked in, the girls ran to their usual places. Lily grabbed a book. Lena went to play with her toys, and Luna climbed onto the couch with her blanket. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The laughter, the warmth, the simple joy of being home, but deep inside, I knew my work was not done. In a few hours, I would have to go back out, drive more hours, pick up more passengers. The cycle never ended. Bills needed to be paid. Groceries needed to be bought. The future had to be built one right at a time still. I wouldn't trade this life for anything. I went to the kitchen and started making breakfast pancakes, their favorite. The smell filled the air, and soon 3 little girls came running in, giggling and hungry dot as we sat around the small table, eating and chatting. Lily suddenly asked, "Mama, when we grow up, can we help you so you don't have to work so hard?" I looked at her, my heart swelling with pride. "My love, I don't want you to worry about me. I want you to dream, to study, to explore, to live a life full of happiness." Lena tilted her head. "But what if we want to help you too?" I smiled, holding their hands. "Then help me by growing into kind, strong, and loving people. Help me by never giving up on your dreams. That will make me the happiest mother in the world." Luna grinned, holding up her tiny pinky. "Promise?" I wrapped my pinky around hers. "Promise." As the day went on, we played, laughed, and lived in the moment. But soon, the clock reminded me that it was time to go back to work. I put on my jacket, grabbed my car keys, and stood at the door. The girls rushed to me, hugging me tightly. Lily whispered, "Drive safe, Mama." Lena held onto my arm. "Come home soon." And Luna, with her big, innocent eyes, looked up and said, "We'll be waiting." I swallowed the lump in my throat and kissed them all. "I'll be back before you know it." And with that, I stepped outside, back into the world, back to the roads, back to the endless rides dot as I drove through the busy streets. I thought about everything, about the struggles, the fears, the exhaustion, but I also thought about the love, the warmth, the purpose. I was not just a taxi driver, I was a mother dot, and that made me the strongest person in the world. The city lights flickered as I drove into the evening. The roads were alive with people going home, going to work, going somewhere each with their own story, their own struggles. I picked up my first passenger of the night, an old man with tired eyes. He sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window. I could feel the weight of something heavy in the silence. "Long day?" I asked gently, breaking the quiet. He sighed, rubbing his hands together. "Long life, dear, long life." I glanced at him through the mirror. "Want to talk about it?" He let out a small chuckle. "You taxi drivers, always knowing when someone needs to talk." I smiled. "Maybe it's a mother's instinct." His eyes softened. "A mother, huh? That's the hardest job in the world." I nodded. "It is, but also the most beautiful." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I lost my wife last year. We were married for 50 years. Now, every time I go home, it just feels empty." I felt a deep ache in my chest. "I'm so sorry," I said softly. He looked at me through the mirror, his tired eyes filled with memories. "You know, dear, when you get to my age, you realize that money, big houses, fancy cars, none of it matters. The only thing that truly matters is who you love and who loves you back. His words hit me hard. I thought about my girls, their laughter, their hugs, their little hands reaching for mine. You're right, I whispered Dot. He gave a small, sad smile. Make sure you tell your daughters you love them every day. I nodded, my throat tight. Every single day. When I dropped him off, he gave me a small tip, but more than that, he gave me a reminder that love is the only thing that stays with us. Even when everything else fades, I drove through the night, picking up strangers, listening to their stories, sharing small moments of kindness. A young woman who had just been promoted at work, excitement shining in her eyes, a tired father working, 2 jobs to support his children, a boy who had just had his heart broken, staring out the window as if searching for answers. Each of them had a story. Each of them had a heart, a life, a dream, and as I drove, I realized we are all the same. We are all just trying to find happiness, trying to survive, trying to love and be loved. Hours passed and finally it was time to go home. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw my house glowing softly in the night. The lights were still on. I walked inside quietly, careful not to wake the girls. But as I entered their room, my heart melted. All 3 of them were asleep, curled up together in one bed, holding hands. I smiled, tears filling my eyes. This was why I worked so hard. Not for money, not for success, but for them. I knelt down, brushing their hair gently, pressing soft kisses on their foreheads. I love you, I whispered, more than you will ever know. As I lay down that night, exhausted but full, I thought about everything, about struggles, love, kindness, and life, and I realized something. Happiness isn't found in big things. It's found in small moments, a hug from your child, a kind word from a stranger, memory that stays in your heart forever. So to everyone out there who is struggling, who is tired, who is doing their best every day, you are not alone. Keep going. Keep loving. Because in the end, love is the only thing that truly matters. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps me share more inspiring, heartfelt stories with you. Let's keep spreading love and strength together. You said. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of little feet running through the house. Sunlight poured in through the windows, filling the room with warmth. I stretched, feeling the weight of exhaustion in my bones, but also the lightness of something else. Loved. As I stepped into the kitchen, I was met with a surprise. Lily, Lena, and Luna were standing by the table, their faces lit up with excitement. In front of them was a plate of slightly burnt toast, a cup of unevenly poured milk, and a small bowl of cereal. Surprise! They all shouted together, their eyes sparkling. I covered my mouth in shock. What is this? Lily stepped forward proudly. Mama, you always wake up early to take care of us. Today we wanted to take care of you. Lena giggled. We made you breakfast. Luna clapped her tiny hands. Do you like it? I felt my heart swell, my eyes burning with happy tears. I walked over, kneeling down to their level. I love it. This is the best breakfast anyone has ever made for me. Luna jumped into my arms, and soon Lily and Lena joined. We held each other tight, and for a moment, the world outside didn't exist. It was just us, our little family, our little world, filled with love. We sat together at the table, and even though the toast was a little burnt and the milk was almost spilling from the cup, it was the most delicious breakfast I had ever had. Lena suddenly looked up at me with big, curious eyes. Mama, when we grow up, will you stop working so hard? I looked at her, then at Lily and Luna, who were waiting for my answer. I smiled softly. Maybe one day, my loves. But until then, I will keep working hard because I want to give you the best life I can. Lily reached for my hand. But Mama, you already give us the best life. My breath caught in my throat. I do? She nodded. You love us. You take care of us. You always come home no matter how tired you are. That's what makes life the best. Lena and Luna nodded in agreement. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I had spent so many nights worrying, was I doing enough? Was I failing them? But here they were, reminding me that love was enough. That I was enough. I pulled them into another hug, kissing their heads. You three are the greatest gift life has ever given me. Luna smiled sleepily. And you are the bestest mama in the whole wide world. That was all I needed to hear. As the day went on, I got ready for work, but this time something felt different. I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just a taxi driver. I was their hero, and that was the greatest job in the world. So to anyone out there who is working hard, feeling tired, wondering if what they do matters, it does. The love you give, the sacrifices you make, the small moments of kindness, it all matters. And one day, someone will look at you with eyes full of love and say, you are my hero. That evening, as I got into my taxi and started the engine, I felt different, lighter, stronger. My daughter's words echoed in my heart. You already give us the best life. For so long, I had thought happiness came from working harder, earning more, giving them everything I never had. But today, I realized happiness was already here, in our small home, in their laughter, in the way they hugged me so tightly as if I was their whole world. I smiled to myself as I pulled onto the road. Tonight, like every night, I would pick up strangers, listen to their stories, share pieces of my own. The first passenger I picked up was a young woman in a beautiful dress. She looked like she had just come from a party, but her eyes were filled with sadness. Where to? I asked, watching her through the mirror. She sighed. Just drive for a little while. I don't want to go home yet. I nodded and started driving through the quiet streets. After a few minutes, I spoke gently. Long night? She let out a small laugh, more like a long life. I glanced at her in the mirror. Want to talk about it? She hesitated, then whispered, do you ever feel like no matter what you do, it's never enough? I gripped the wheel a little tighter. All the time. She looked up, surprised. Really? I smiled softly. I'm a mother. I work late nights. I drive people around, and sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough for my kids. If I'm giving them the life they deserve. She leaned forward slightly. And what do you do when you feel that way? I thought about my daughters, small hands making breakfast that morning, about the way they looked at me like I was their whole world. I remind myself that love is enough, I said, that just being there, just trying, is already more than enough. Tears welled up in her eyes. I never thought of it that way. I gave her a kind smile through the mirror. Sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. But if you're doing your best, that's enough. You're enough. She wiped her tears quickly. Thank you, she whispered. I really needed to hear that. When I dropped her off, she smiled for the first time that night. It wasn't big, but it was real, and that was enough. The night continued. Passenger after passenger, each with their own struggles, their own stories. A man on his way home after a long shift. A teenager nervous about his future. A grandmother visiting her grandchildren for the first time in years. And with each ride, I realized we are all just trying. We are all carrying something. By the time my shift ended, the city was quiet again. The streets were empty, the night calm. I drove home, feeling exhausted but at peace. As I stepped inside, I tiptoed into my daughter's room. The three of them were asleep, their faces soft in the moonlight. I knelt beside them, brushing their hair gently. You are my reason, I whispered. My reason to keep going, my reason to be strong, my reason to believe in love. I kissed their foreheads and slipped into bed, knowing that tomorrow I would wake up and do it all again, because that's what mothers do. We love. We fight. We never give up. And in the end, that love is what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me share more inspiring and heartfelt stories with you. Let's keep spreading love and strength together. The days passed, one after another, each one filled with long hours behind the wheel and quiet moments of love at home. Life wasn't easy, but it was beautiful in its own way. One evening, just as I was about to leave for my shift, Lily tugged at my sleeve. Mama, wait, she said, her brown eyes wide with excitement. I knelt down. What is it, my love? She grinned and held out a small, folded piece of paper. Open it. I unfolded the paper and my breath caught in my throat. It was a drawing of me driving my taxi with my three girls sitting in the back seat, all of them smiling. Above it, in shaky handwriting, Lily had written, "Our mama, our hero." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Lena leaned on my shoulder. Do you like it, Mama? I pulled all three of them into a hug, holding them tight. I love it, I whispered. I love it more than anything. Luna, still too little to understand everything, just clapped her tiny hands. Mama is the bestest. I kissed her cheek, and you are my heart. I tucked the drawing carefully into my pocket before heading out for the night. Every time I felt tired, every time exhaustion crept into my bones, I reached into my pocket and touched the paper. It reminded me why I kept going. That night, I picked up a man who had been quiet at first, but eventually spoke. He was struggling with his own problems, worrying about his family, about making enough money, about not being a good father. I listened. And when he was done, I pulled out the small drawing from my pocket and showed it to him. You see this? I said softly. He looked at it, confused. What is it? A drawing my daughter made, I explained. I work long hours. I come home tired. But to her, I am a hero. The man stared at it for a moment, then wiped out his eyes. Maybe, he whispered, maybe I'm a hero to my kids too. I smiled. I'm sure you are. When I dropped him off, he looked at me one last time. Thank you. I think I needed this ride. More than I thought. I nodded. Take care. And remember, you're already doing enough. As I drove away, I thought about how sometimes we forget to see ourselves the way our loved ones see us. We think we're not doing enough, that we're failing, but to the people who love us, we're already heroes. That night when I got home, I didn't even change out of my work clothes before climbing into bed and wrapping my arms around my daughters. Whispered into the dark, Mama loves you, always. Half asleep, Lena mumbled, we love you more, Mama. And that was all I needed to keep going, because love is what makes us strong. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of soft giggles. I opened my eyes to see all three of my daughters sitting on my bed, watching me with excited faces. Lily held out a cup. We made you tea, Mama, Lena grinned. And we didn't spill this. Time, Luna clapped her little hands. Drink, drink. I sat up, taking the cup carefully. It was warm, a little too full, and smelled like they had added way too much sugar. But to me, it was the best tea in the world. I took a sip, smiling. It's perfect. They cheered, proud of their little surprise. Lily sat beside me, playing with the edge of my blanket. Mama, yes, love? She hesitated, then asked softly, do you ever get tired? I looked into her eyes, seeing the concern in them. My little girl, always thinking, always worrying about me, Dot. I reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Sometimes, my love, but when I see you three, all my tiredness goes away. Lena sat up straight. Really? I nodded. Yes, because love is stronger than tiredness. Love is stronger than anything. Luna, still too little to fully understand, just snuggled into my arms. Mama's strong, she mumbled sleepily. I kissed the top of her head. Because of you three. The day went on, filled with small moments of laughter, of play, of tiny hands reaching for mine. But soon evening arrived, and it was time for me to go back to work. This time, as I left, they didn't look sad. They stood by the door, smiling at me. Dot Lily waved. Come back safe, Mama, Lena added. We'll be waiting. And Luna, with her tiny fingers, made a heart shape. Love you, Mama. I pressed my hand to my chest, where my heart felt like it might burst. I love you more. As I drove into the night, picking up passengers, listening to their stories, I realized something. Life is hard, but love makes it beautiful. And no matter how tired I got, no matter how many hours I worked, I was not alone. I had my girls, I had my purpose, and that was enough. That night, as I drove through the city streets, I felt something deep inside me peace. The road stretched ahead, endless and winding, much like life itself. Some turns were smooth, some were rough, but I knew I just had to keep going. I picked up a woman who was sitting on the curb, wiping her eyes. She was dressed in expensive clothes, but her face was filled with sadness. As she got into the taxi, I greeted her with a gentle smile. Long night? She let out a soft, shaky laugh. Long life. I could hear the pain in her voice, just like the many passengers before her. I started driving, giving her time to gather her thoughts. After a while, she whispered, I had everything planned. A perfect job, a perfect home, a perfect future. She paused, staring out of the window, but tonight I lost it all. And now, I don't know who I am anymore. I glanced at her through the mirror, my heart aching for her. You're still you, I said softly. She let out a bitter laugh. But who am I without my success, without my plans? I thought about my own life, about how years ago I had dreams that never came true. I had imagined a different life for myself, one without long hours, without struggling to pay bills, without nights spent worrying about the future. But then I thought about my daughters, their laughter, their small hands holding mine, the way they looked at me as if I was their entire world, and I realized I didn't lose my dream. My dream just changed. So I told her, sometimes life doesn't go the way we planned, but that doesn't mean it's over. It just means a new story is about to begin. She was silent for a long time. Then, for the first time since she got in, she looked at me through the mirror. You really believe that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled. I know it. She wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. Maybe I can start over. You can, I assured her. And maybe this time it'll be even better. By the time I dropped her off, her face had softened. She wasn't smiling yet, but she wasn't crying anymore either. Before she left, she turned to me. Thank you. You don't know how much this meant to me. I nodded. Take care. And remember, you are still you. As I drove away, I thought about how so many people carried pain in their hearts, and how sometimes all they